The fog came every afternoon, like an old habit that never forgot time. As 5 o'clock approached, the whiteness began to swallow the trees, the windows, and finally the small path leading to the house I had just moved into. The house stood at the edge of Arvina village, quiet, far from shops, even with only a single signal, sometimes none at all. Just what I wanted, a quiet place to write. I, Dira, a mystery novelist who had lost inspiration a year ago. My editor said, maybe I just needed a new place, away from the crowds, close to the quiet. So here I was, in an old house, the white paint peeling in some places, with the wooden roof creaking softly with each passing breeze. However, this house felt strange from the moment I first opened the door. The air inside was cold, but not ordinary cold. It was as if the room still remembered someone who had lived there and didn't want to forget. In the living room, there was an old piano with one broken key. On the wall hung a painting of a woman in a black dress, her face blurry, as if deliberately painted without eyes. And under the stairs, a mailbox contained an old letter with no sender's name, just neat handwriting. For you, who has finally arrived. I laughed at the time, thinking it was just a joke from the previous owner. But that first night, I couldn't laugh anymore, because at exactly 2 in the morning, as fog clung to the windows, I heard footsteps in the attic, slowly, one by one, right above my room. I took a flashlight, slowly climbing the creaking wooden stairs. But when I opened the attic door, no one was there, just a pile of paper, dust, and an old typewriter in the corner. But on the table nearby, there were pages of a novel, 10 pages, neatly typed. The title, House at the Edge of the Fog by Dira, and my hands were shaking. I hadn't written a single sentence since I arrived in this house. And what made my blood stop even more? The page contained a story about myself, coming to this old house, and ending with the sentence. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Dira heard footsteps in the attic, and went up there for the last time. I stared at the typewriter for a long time, not daring to approach. But over the sound of the wind and the creaking wood, I could swear, there was the sound of breathing coming from the attic. Slow, deep, as if the house itself was breathing. Morning came late in Arvina. The fog hadn't completely cleared, only thinning a bit, enough to see the shadows of the trees through the window. I hadn't slept all night. The papers were still on the table, with my name printed in the upper right corner of each page. I tried to read them again, hoping to find a mistake that would prove this was just a coincidence. But every sentence felt too accurate, the description of my clothes, the coffee I'd placed on the table, even the clock that had stopped at 2:03. And that had happened just last night. I stared at the old typewriter in the corner of the room. The black was faded, but the keys were still intact. I stared longer, and then I realized the ink ribbon was still wet. That afternoon I went to the village head's house to ask about this house. It was an old man named Pak Arman, with a deep voice and slow steps. Greater than that house at the edge of the fog. It's rare for anyone to stay there, Dira, he said, staring out the window. That house used to belong to the Aksara family. They were both writers too, husband and wife. But after the wife died, the husband disappeared without a trace. I swallowed. Greater than. I disappeared. Yes, only the writing desk and typewriter remained in the attic, just like you described earlier. I tried to smile. So, no one lived there after that. Yes, but not for long. They say they often hear the sound of typing at night. He paused, staring at me sharply. You too, huh? I didn't answer. I just smiled briefly and excused myself, saying I needed to write. That night I returned to the desk. I wanted to confirm whether the typewriter was really running on its own, or if it was just my tired imagination. I brushed the dust off the keys and decided to type a few sentences. Greater than. My name is Dira, and I don't believe in ghosts. After just the first 3 letters, the machine stopped. I stared at the ink ribbon. Then suddenly, the keys moved on their own. Click. A sound too clear to imagine. Word after word appeared on the blank paper in front of me. I know you came. And I know you read my letter. My hands dropped from the table. I took a few steps back, my heart pounding. The paper continued to move, as if typed by an invisible hand. Then it stopped. One final sentence appeared, in slightly thicker ink. "Look under the third floorboard from the door." I stared at the floor. Slowly, I crouched down and counted the wooden planks from the entrance. 1, 2, 3. I knocked. It sounded different, empty. With the tip of a knife, I pried a bit of the wood away. There was a gap. Inside, an old, dusty envelope with a name written on it that made my entire body stiffen. Greater than. To Dira, if you're reading this, it means I haven't had a chance to leave yet. The letter trembled gently in my hand. The paper was yellowed, the edges brittle, but the writing on it was still clear black ink that hadn't faded with time. To Dira, if you're reading this, it means I haven't had a chance to leave yet. I opened it slowly, afraid of ruining the paper. The letter was short, but each sentence felt like someone was speaking directly into my ear. "This house holds more than meets the eye. Don't trust the mirror in the living room. And if you hear footsteps in the attic, don't go up alone. I left something for you behind the photo of the woman in the black dress." I stared at the wall, at the blurry painting. The woman's face was eyeless. For some reason, this time I felt the painting was staring back at me. I brought a chair and climbed up slowly. Behind the old wooden frame, there was a gap, and inside an old photograph. A black and white photograph of a man and a woman, standing in front of this house. The woman was wearing the same black dress as in the painting, and the man beside her, had a face that looked so much like mine. I fell off the chair. The photo slipped and fell to the floor. From the attic, I heard footsteps again, footsteps. This time heavier, closer. I held the photo, trying to think rationally, but something behind me moved. The bedroom door shook violently, and the old piano in the living room played to itself one long, dissonant note, piercing the night mist. I looked at the photo again, and noticed a small detail I hadn't noticed before. In the corner of the photo, it read, "Gira e achara menos 1927. The fog grew thicker that night. The house felt like the belly of a large, sleeping creature, silent but alive. I stared at the painting now hanging crookedly on the wall. Behind it, where the photograph had been found, was still slightly open, invitingly. But my mind was on something else. The sentence in the letter, "Don't trust the mirror in the living room." I slowly descended, my footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. The living room was dark, lit only by moonlight filtering through the misty window. On the opposite wall hung a large, silver-framed mirror, slightly opaque, as if covered in mist from within. I stood in front of it, and suddenly, the air turned cold. My breath escaped my mouth in a vapor, but my reflection was nowhere to be seen. Just an empty room beyond the mirror. There was no me, just a piano, an old sofa, and a woman standing behind me. I turned quickly, no one was there. But in the mirror, the woman was still there. Her face was blurry, but I knew. It was the woman in the painting. She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly raised her hand. The mirror trembled gently, like water touched by the wind. From behind the misty reflection, a faint whisper came, "Dira, bring her back." I stepped back, my heart beating fast. The piano behind me played to itself, one long note, then stopped abruptly. And on the mirror's surface, blurred words appeared from the steam. 1927, the day it repeats. All the lights in the house were out. Only the light from the mirror remained, a soft white, as if waiting for me to step toward it. And as I approached, I saw something on the other side of the glass. The same house, but brighter. And there I saw myself, with someone whose face looked exactly like the man in the photo. I don't know how to explain it. When I opened my eyes, the world looked the same, but not quite the same. The fog still hung outside the window, but the sky was a strange color, like an old photograph. The air felt heavy, and bird sounds, nothing, just a thick, oppressive silence. Outside the house, the dirt road looked new, clean, uncrowded with weeds like yesterday. And in the distance, I heard the sound of a piano, playing softly, the same notes, repeating like a melody stuck in time. I descended the stairs, In the living room, the mirror reflected something I'd never seen before. The same house, but brighter, livelier. Candles burned on the table, and there was the smell of freshly brewed black coffee. Then I saw him. A man sat at the piano, wearing a rumpled white shirt, his fingers playing calmly on the keys. He turned his head, and I froze. His face exactly the same as mine. "You've finally come," he said quietly. "I'm waiting for you, Dira." I couldn't speak. He smiled faintly, then looked at the mirror across the room. "Greater than. This day will happen again, as it always does." He pointed to the calendar on the wall, July 27th, 1927. "Greater than. We're writing a story that never ends," he continued. "And the only way to get out is to end it." Suddenly there was a loud bang from above, from the attic. The man stared up at it, his face tense. "Greater than. He came sooner than he should have," he whispered. "You have to choose, Dira, me or him." Then everything shook. The mirror shook violently, and in its reflection, I saw two versions of myself. One in the real world, one in the past, both staring at each other. And the fog began to swallow everything. My steps were heavy as I climbed the dusty wooden stairs. Each step creaked, as if rejecting my presence. The sounds from above grew clearer, not just one, but two. One was a woman's voice, whispering softly. The other was the sound of a baby crying. I stopped at the last step. The air in the attic was cold, like a timeless space. As I slowly opened the door, the scent of damp wood and burning candles filled the room. In the center of the attic, there was an old table with an open book, its pages covered in handwriting, names, and dates. The last date written was July 27th, 1927. The last name on it. My hands trembled. When I touched the page, the room suddenly changed. The candles went out one by one, and a thick mist filled the room. From a dark corner, a woman in a black dress appeared, her face blurred as if formed from shadows. "You finally remember." Her voice echoed, soft but eerie. "This house isn't where you came from, Dira. This is where you're returning." I stepped back, looking around. The pictures on the wall showed family portraits, a man and a woman, then a baby in their arms. The man's face, my face. The woman's face, her face. "You left us when this house burned," he said again. "And time repeats itself, until you fulfill your promise." The baby's cries turned into shrill screams. The small mirror on the floor reflected the flames, and in that reflection, I saw the house burning to the ground. I ran, carrying the book in my hand, but the woman was trapped inside. I closed my eyes. The fire, the screams, and time turned back like a vortex. "Finish this story, Dira, or you will live in it forever." The fire still burned. Even though it had been almost 100 years, I could feel it. The heat, the sound, even the smell. It was as if time had stopped that night. As I stared into the cracked mirror in the attic, the world behind the reflection began to move. It was like an old movie, but I wasn't the audience, I was part of the story. The sky outside was a fiery red. The flames devoured the wooden walls of the house, one by one, and amidst the flames, I saw myself running with a book, my face full of panic. Behind me, a woman in a black dress screamed, holding a small baby in her arms. "Dira, don't leave us." I stopped. My past self turned, her eyes full of tears, but she still ran outside. The fire grew stronger. The roof began to collapse. And at that moment, a loud, deafening explosion. The mirror before me trembled, then shattered. From the fragments, I saw other faces. Myself in the past, in the present, maybe even in the future. All trapped inside the same house. "You are not a visitor, Dira." The woman's voice echoed again. "You are the guardian of a shattered time. And this house is your punishment." I tried to run, but the floor cracked. The fire from within the mirror spread out into the real world. The fog turned to smoke. The house burned itself from within again and again, as if refusing to go out. Before everything went dark, I saw something on the table. An old photograph, charred around the edge, showing me, the woman, and a small baby. On the back of the photo was written a single sentence. "Until we meet again, when time forgives." After the fire died down, all that remained was fog. Everything felt still. The house, now half destroyed, but not completely gone. I walked through the living room. The floor was charred, but every step I took felt like I was stepping back into the past. In the center of the room, only one object remained intact: the large mirror. Its surface was now smooth and shiny, as if newly made. But as I approached, the mirror began to pulsate, like a living heart. In its reflection, I saw different versions of myself, one dressed in the past, one from the future, and one staring with blank eyes. "Time doesn't flow here," a soft voice said behind me. "It circles, and you are at its center." I turned. The woman in the black dress stood there, her face now peaceful. The baby in her arms was gone, only a small shawl remained. "We don't want you to die, Dira," she said. "We want you to remember." Suddenly, the mirror displayed moments from my life. The day I wrote my first book, the day I bought this house, the day I heard about the fire and realized it was the same house I'd been dreaming about. It was all connected. I wasn't a guest. I was part of the cycle. Every time time collapses, he continued, you rewrite this story so the world won't forget. But you, too, are trapped in the writing. I stared into the mirror. My image began to fade, replaced by the shadow of a pen scribbling on a white page. And there, it slowly wrote. Chapter 1, The Forgotten House. I smiled faintly. Everything was spinning again, and I knew this story wasn't over. The fire still burned. Even though it had been almost 100 years, I could feel it. The heat, the sound, even the smell. It was as if time had stopped that night. As I stared into the cracked mirror in the attic, the world behind the reflection began to move. It was like an old movie, but I wasn't the audience, I was part of the story. The sky outside was a fiery red. The flames devoured the wooden walls of the house, one by one, and amidst the flames, I saw myself running with a book, my face full of panic. Behind me, a woman in a black dress screamed, holding a small baby in her arms. Dira, don't leave us. I stopped. My past self turned, her eyes full of tears, but she still ran outside. The fire grew stronger. The roof began to collapse, and at that moment, a loud, deafening explosion. The mirror before me trembled, then shattered. From the fragments, I saw other faces, myself in the past, in the present, maybe even in the future, all trapped inside the same house. You are not a visitor, Dira. The woman's voice echoed again. You are the guardian of a shattered time, and this house is your punishment. I tried to run, but the floor cracked. The fire from within the mirror spread out into the real world. The fog turned to smoke. The house burned itself from within again and again, as if refusing to go out. Before everything went dark, I saw something on the table. An old photograph, charred around the edge, showing me, the woman, and a small baby. On the back of the photo was written a single sentence. Until we meet again, when time forgives. The sky above the house turned a silvery gray. The fog was no longer just a blanket, but alive, breathing, swirling like something conscious. Dira stood before the large door in the center of the main room, a door that had never been there before. The surface was as black as a mirror, but it wasn't a reflection, she said. It was a scene of herself in the past. She saw herself running from the burning house, looking back, and a woman holding a baby in the flames. You left us, the voice echoed softly, yet it cut deep. But this house never left you. Dira tried to open the door, but the handle felt cold, like frozen metal. From behind it came the soft tinkling of a piano, as if playing a song she had long forgotten. As she pressed her ear to the door, another voice rang out between the notes. Come in, Dira. This house wants to talk. And suddenly the door opened by itself. Blinding white light poured out, carrying the scent of burning wood and the fragrance of jasmine. Dira stepped inside and found herself no longer in that house. She was in a room with no walls, only a floor of memories, pieces of her life spinning in the air like a broken film. She saw her childhood, her mother's laughter, rainy nights, and the image of herself writing at an old wooden desk. In the center of the room stood a woman in a black dress, holding a baby, but this time, her face was clearly visible. It was the same face as the old photograph Dira had found in the attic. The face of her wife whom she had long thought had died along with their child. Dira fell silent, her steps trembling. I tried to come back, Dira said softly, but this house guarded you. The woman interrupted. Guarded your regret until you dared to open this door yourself. The woman approached, looking at her with peaceful eyes. She handed the baby into Dira's arms. Now, it's time to go home. And as soon as she touched the baby, all the light around her shattered into shards of glass. The house, the fog, the jasmine, everything was gone. Just silence, and the sound of her own breathing. Dira opened her eyes. She was standing amidst the ruins of an old house that had long since burned down. The morning sun shone on the dust and bricks. In her hands, there was only a book, her own book. The last page was blank, except for a single sentence that had just appeared in black ink. Finally, I'm home. The morning sky was a pale gray. Dew clung to the weeds growing around the ruins of the house. The wind carried a soft sound like the whisper of someone once known, but no longer fully remembered. Dira stood silently amid the rubble, staring at the book in her hands. The pages were now clean, as if all the stories ever written had been erased by time. Only one page remained. The last. There, a single sentence reappeared this time, in dark red ink. Sleep, this house is at peace. Dira closed the book slowly. When she lifted her head, the collapsed house began to fade, not burning, not disappearing, but evaporating into a light dust. The fog that had once engulfed the house was now absorbed into the sky, leaving only the silent forest and the scent of wet earth. She knew it was all over. It wasn't a dream, not a hallucination. The house was indeed alive, holding her memories and guilt. And now, the house chose to sleep. Thank you, she whispered softly, for letting me go home. Dira walked down the path toward the village, her steps light, no longer clouded by the burden of the past. The morning sun pierced the remaining mist, casting a golden glow on the book she was carrying. But before the mist completely cleared, a soft voice could be heard from afar. Every house holds its own soul. Dira turned around. No one was there. Only the wind blew from the direction of the now-gone house. She smiled faintly, then walked away. The camera slowly ascended into the sky. From above, the place where the house once stood now revealed nothing but a meadow, with a foundation shaped like a closed aja, sign that the house was truly asleep.